The stars above the drifting arkship gleamed with cold fire as Yera cradled the small, limp form of her daughter, her hands trembling. Her voice cracked as she whispered the same word over and over. "Wake, please wake," as if the repetition would tether the little girl's soul to her fragile body again. The ship was too quiet, too still, its engines long powered down, its crew long perished, its corridors echoing with ghost lights and memories. But the child was still warm, barely, and that was enough for Yera to try again. Even though she knew there was no medbay left, no energy cells, no life support save the one room, sealed in stubborn hope, with an ancient emergency beacon she had triggered 100 rotations ago. Her people were gone, lost to plague, to war, to betrayal, and she was the last of the Matari, unless her daughter woke, unless the flicker in her breath returned, unless the human came. He was not what she imagined a savior would look like. His suit was scuffed, scratched, marred with the wear of 1,000 disasters, his boots slow and heavy across the plating of her dead world ship. But his eyes held something she had never seen before, not in all her cycles, not in the leaders or the medics or the warriors. His eyes held fury and sorrow and relentless hope. He found her in the corner of the cryo ward, kneeling over the child, and he did not speak at first, just took in the sight, the frailty, the life, slipping in quiet pulses. He stepped closer, and Yera rose with her body, shielding her daughter, her voice hoarse and desperate. "She is all I have left." And the human did not back away, did not lift a weapon, did not sneer as others had done when seeing what remained of the Matari. He only said, "Where is the power core?" And she blinked because she had not heard that question in so long, and never with such resolve. He tore into the belly of the ship like a man possessed, guiding her with gestures and tools that hissed and sparked. He talked to the systems like they were old friends, coaxing cooperation from machines that had been slumbering longer than her grief had stretched. He rerouted conduits, rebooted panels, even when they exploded in flares of dying fire. He only gritted his teeth and kept going. Yera did not understand the names he muttered, or the equations he etched with black markers across broken glass, but she knew what he was doing. He was building a heartbeat. He was forging a pulse, a rhythm from scrap and silence and faith. And he said once more, "I've seen worse," and she did not ask how. She only clutched her daughter closer, watching the screens flicker to blue as warmth returned to the chamber, and for a moment the girl's chest rose just a little higher than before. Yera had not told him what her daughter carried, not yet, because the words were heavy and sharp, and because she had thought no one would come. But now that the child stirred and the machines hummed, she found herself speaking the truth, not just about the plague that took the Matari, not just about the betrayal that left their ark adrift, but about what her daughter was, a living library of her people, the last mind-encoded vessel of Matari thought and dream and song. And she saw his face shift, not in fear, but in fierce understanding. And he said, "Then I'll give her a future, because a story like that doesn't end like this." And she nodded, because she had no other answer, only belief in the strange, defiant magic that lived in this human's stubborn bones. She watched him press his hand to the medical core, and felt the thrum of something awakening across the ship. Not power, not quite, but purpose. And in her arms the child flinched and breathed and whimpered. The ship groaned as pressure returned, as if it too were waking from a sleep too long, too cruel. The lights flickered and stabilizers hissed, and Yera fell to her knees, weeping, not from fear, but because her daughter opened her eyes just a sliver and whispered one word that no one had spoken aloud in over a century. "Mother." And the human knelt beside them, his face drawn, his fingers trembling as he activated the nutrient mesh and diagnostics and neurogrid. And she did not ask how he knew these things or why he had learned them. She only looked into his face and saw the echoes of her own pain there. And when the child reached out with her tiny fingers and touched the human's arm. There was a flicker in the neural array, a pattern the ship had not shown in all its drifting years. And the human, said she, remembers the code. And she remembers the light. And we are not done. Not yet. Not ever. The beacon pulsed now, strong and steady, broadcasting across the void. And Yera watched as the human recorded her daughter's breath pattern into the central array as he copied her mind state into backup crystals. Sealed in reinforced pods, he moved like a man who had lost something once and would never allow it again. And when he turned to Yera and said, "She will live, she will lead, she will be more than you hoped," she broke inside and rebuilt herself. All at once her hands found his, and she gripped them tightly, her head bowed as the past of her people bled into the present, into the future carried in one girl's waking breath. The ship adjusted course, its old engines coughing to life, guided by human code and Matari maps and the sound of a girl humming the first song of her kind in 100 cycles. And when she looked at him again, she said, "Her name is Vela." And he smiled and said, "I know." And outside the stars watched quietly, as if they too dared to believe again. It was not a world Yera knew, not one from their ancient charts, nor from the memory echoes of her daughter's mind, but it had air and warmth and sky and soil, and that was enough. The ship descended slow and careful, guided by both human hands and the child's. Whispered instructions fed directly into the interface. She had not stopped humming since the day she woke, each note unlocking another door in the ship's song. And when they touched down, when the ramp hissed open, when wind kissed their faces for the first time in what felt like lifetimes, Yera carried her daughter down to the surface. But halfway, the little girl wriggled free and stood on her own legs, uncertain at first, then steadier, step by step, with eyes wide and mouth open in joy. The human knelt watching, silent and tired, his suit hanging loose now, his eyes rimmed in red. But he smiled, and it was the kind of smile that said, "This was enough." Yera turned to him, arms out, words trapped behind the weight in her chest. And he only said, "I have to go. There are others who call, and I can't let them be forgotten too." She wanted to protest, to beg to make him stay. But her daughter turned and looked at him, and simply said, "Thank you." And in that moment all things between them were whole, were right. He touched the girl's forehead one last time, then turned and walked back into the ship. And the ramp sealed and the engines cried and fire lifted him back to the stars, where someone else waited, and where someone else would be saved. And Yera stood in the wind with her daughter's small hand in hers and said softly, "Not the end, not this time, ever again."